I'm Sim with the support team, and I'll be hosting today's lunch and learn. In case we missed it, here's some end of life announcements, especially for version 6. That'll be coming up. V6 will be hitting end of life for very shortly on the June 1st, 2023. And the next product roadmap date will be on March. Oh, that has already passed. Okay. Before I get started with anything, are there any questions? Okay, let's see. Within a flow, how do you create a variable and update it? Okay. So inside of a flow, let me create a folder for today's lunch and learn. That would be 223. So first, you would create a flow. If you are just updating a data structure, this is assuming that you've already created one, you would use a step called create data. And this will create a version of that data structure.
Because for mine, I had an index I was pulling from, and it was just an integer. I just had integer. I hit create data, just like you're doing now, and then it just wouldn't let me update it. So I didn't know what I was doing wrong.
Well, the create data doesn't update anything. It creates a variable inside of the flow that you can use. And then once you're ready to update it, you would need another step to save it to the database, like a save entity step.
A save entity step. So not, I guess I was using, trying to get this window out of my.
Where you can pass in a list of entities to save it. Say you're updating a bunch of data. Once you have everything changed, you pass it into save entities, and then that's when they'll save. Let me.
I guess I was using set value as to my attempt to try to. I used create data to create the variable, and I was trying to figure out, well, how to just like an integer, how do I change the integer from a 1 to a 2 is all I was trying to do.
Set value is one of the ways that you can do it. You are changing the value, but because you're not persisting it in the flow, or like if you're not saving it to the database, it will only persist in the flow.
Well, that's fine if it's only within the flow.
Depending on if it could be various things, like if you're checking an integer, it's like, if 1 go down this path, if 2 go down that path. We can do things like that, but if you want using a set value, that is one way to change it. You want this to be an integer instead. Okay. So say we're starting with 0. You can pass it into a set value and choose integer. And then, this is the integer. This is the part that I'm supposed to be changing or not.
That's what I kept running into. I was like, it won't let me change it there. And then when I picked a value, I felt that was being weird for me.
Oh. I don't usually use set value as my preferred method.
Well, that's fine. That was just what I was trying. Whatever you recommend.
There's a few different ways we can go about it. One of them could actually just be another create data where you have a change value on it. The other one is, I am blanking right now. Okay, it is a mapping step. A mapping step would be one of my preferred ways to do it. Once you connect it to that step, you will be able to see the value here. And as long as it's ignored, it will keep the original value. So say you want to change the constant, we'll change this to 5. And then we'll just pass out this integer so we can actually see what the value is. So the original value is 0. Changed it to 5, and the final value should be 5. I don't personally use the set value step a lot. I prefer using the mapping step since it can auto find any variables that are there in that moment.
Okay, yeah, I guess I didn't know what the step would necessarily be called. I was just like, well, I don't want to change a value. So I was like, okay, set value, at least the terminology makes sense, but I guess it's not exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think set value might only work if you already have another value that you're passing it into. So like, say you're saying change from A to B. And like you're saying select from flow, the value that's already there. Let me that really quickly. We'll change that integer to 10. Instead of that, we're going to change value. We'll pick our original, this integer, and then that integer. Ooh.
Yeah, so I kept finding too is it wanted object, but I was like, it's not, it's an integer.
So it does change the value this way. It's probably using the object step just so we can use that for any kind of variable. If you're using a string, an integer, decimal, etc. It does feel concerning that it like shows up without being compatible data type portion.
Yeah, because sometimes it like what the next step, that step it would be going into, like, I guess it didn't like it or whatever. And yeah, it was red and it had an exclamation on it. It's like I don't like this compatibility here. And I'm like, well, I can't change what the proper. I mean, I'm setting it to this, this and it knows it's a integer, and I'm setting it to integer. So I was like, but it still has an issue with it. I don't know. I'll just use mapping if it's set values being kind of funky.
Yeah, definitely want to put in a dev ticket for that because that feels concerning when it looks like that. But once you actually have the data, if you need to save it, you would just throw it in one of these.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Is set value better than mapping step or change value option on outcome? Is mapping step creating a new instance of an object in your memory? I don't know the particularities of which of these steps are creating new objects in the memory or not. I would assume that it would be creating a new memory.
Yeah, I did my research, and just for everybody who's on the call, I'd like to say when you use mapping step, it actually creates a new object in memory. So if you deal with lots of data, that's going to be slower than, let's say, to say set value. It's more work, but it will take less memory. And if you want to be type safe on set value, you can cast object to a type, in this case to integer. Does it make sense?
That would make a lot of sense. Thank you for that. Are
And
there any?
also, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. From yesterday, there was a person who asked about the data repeater organization. I do have like a cool use case that I can show if that person is still on the call today.
I will need to follow up with who was doing yesterday's call. What was the question that you want to review? Just like what the result of?
It was Will, and the question was how can we organize a data repeater on a form, like move them up and down, maybe. And I do have like a cool case where I can show how could it be done. Will did not give me a chance to demonstrate yesterday.
Okay, the person who asked the question wasn't on this call today, though. Would you like to send that example over for us to just review on this call, and maybe we can just point it to this recording once it's done?
I can demonstrate, and if needed, I can create a project and send it over if that's needed.
Are there any other questions that we have? Okay, I'll move on to a small demo for today. So whenever we have to report on data that's in multiple tables, we would usually want to, one of the ways would be creating a fetch to each of these and then joining them together. But instead of doing that, we can actually create a relationship join between the two tables and then report on that relationship itself. So let me just create two data structures right now. So say that we have a account ID, and that'll be the main item, a name, and birth date. Save that. Review. Oh, I see. Type namespaces do get upset if there is a number, because you cannot start not variables, but objects with a number in code. So that'll be the first one, and then we can create another structure. Let's delete that. And we'll join it based off of the account ID as the foreign ID. Maybe this has a address and a phone number. So let's create a sender result. And let's just quickly populate the data. Structure. We'll just iterate through this really quickly. So building a constant, let's build the data. We'll break all of these out so you can see all of the values. Generate a random grid for the account ID. We'll generate a random full name. Let's generate a random you can give everyone the same birth date for now. And then generate a random. Step I was looking for. Actually, let's generate a random surname. And we'll have a random int for the phone number, which isn't perfect, but we'll do for this example. Or that should be the real ID. This will be the account ID is the quid. The birth date will be current date time. And then the name will be the full name. The account ID will just be quid again. The address will be, let's create a, we'll use the item index plus the random integer and the sorting. Five, 5,000. We'll iterate for 10 items. Awesome. Since we just created that, we should be able to, oops, create that really quickly. We run both of these and we can see our 10 items. So let's create a join. Should be add a relationship. Joining the first and second. Local connection, and this will be first. And then we'll be joining on the account ID. Account ID. Oh, we're going to be joining to the second based on the account ID over here. Then we can add a relationship. So now that the relationship has been created, we can be able to create a join on the first and second structure. Add link table. There we go. And record on the account ID, birth date, and the address and phone number. Reporting on only one, instead of doing multiple fetches, you would be hitting the database multiple times and being able to do it on just this one report. You will only hit the database once with this specific query. And they'll be more performant in general. If we want to be able to use this data structure, Let's see if I remember where. I remember where it is. Generate step to run report. This step will create a data structure using the data in your report that you can use throughout. This would be incredibly helpful if you have data in just multiple tables and you only need one column for each. Once you click on that and save, it will compile a data structure using these fields. So if you ever need to use it to report on something or inside of a flow, we'll go back to our original flow over here instead. Run report. You can pick the original report that you were using previously. And then you can actually select type and it will understand that it will output as that data type. When you do it this way, you'll be able to know exactly what type each field is. So you wouldn't just get a dynamic data row, which is much harder to manipulate. And you would have to know that every time it's outputting that like dynamic data row portion A is like the name and B is the phone number. With this, you can actually see the data structure being created. Versus, let's switch it back to data rows and we'll see the difference in the output. Or actually wouldn't see the difference right there, but best way to show this. Difference can definitely be seen here, where you'll see dynamic data rows, you'll see different cell values. Like I want cell value 1 and you want like the first value, for example, versus if this was an actual type, you can actually say, hey, I want the first address that shows up and it's a string. And that's just much easier to manipulate. Okay, since that was the end of my demo, is there any remaining questions? Okay. That'll be the end of today's lunch and learn then. Thank you for everyone for coming out.